Hi, I'm Chris Machias, creator of Flux Destiny. Welcome to the Hero Helix channel here on YouTube. I'm here today with Ella Powell, our head of community and RPG at Flux Destiny. How are you, Ella?
I am good, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing good. I always like to joke that we have to do like the obligatory hello, even though you and
Yeah,
I talk to each other 24/7. So it's not like
that's
we
true.
haven't been meeting all day. So
Well, Chris, I always love talking with you. And, we are gaining so many new friends and so many new people are watching us and getting to know us. And so we are doing this video to kind of reset and introduce ourselves again and to learn a little bit about the history of Flux Destiny. So, Chris, why don't you start off and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of who you are and your importance to this story and this world.
well, I appreciate that. What a great setup. So I so my name's Chris Machias, of course, and I'm a producer, author, director, character designer. I've done so many different things in the realm of storytelling and entertainment. The last 20 years, I've spent producing anime series, live action movies, music albums. I've kind of touched it all. And, it was really during my time as the head of original anime at Funimation where I really got to really experience everything as I ran their entire original film department. So I ran all the original movies and TV shows and music I oversaw and ran. And it gave me an opportunity to really understand storytelling even more deeply, and something that I've become quite a nerd about as Ella gets to experience on a lot of lives where I get very into storytelling. Also from the behind the scenes when she gets to see all the the framework that goes into creating the Flux Destiny books. Over the years, running several entertainment companies and now running Hero Helix, I wanted to create a studio that was focused on creating original universes that were really, really well thought out in terms of not only their magic systems and characters, but the worlds themselves. They have a depth in them that is apparent when people enter these universes. Ella, I suspect, I know you're the same way as me. I'm going to say suspect, but I know you are. If you get me on like a fandom wiki, I will be on I will go down that rabbit hole. Even if it's something I've never played, I will go down that rabbit hole and just start reading about just these fictional, universes. And I just absolutely love that. And I wanted to provide that same kind of experience here with what we're doing with Flux Destiny. And so, my long road in the industry has kind of brought me here.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, we all love Flux Destiny and we're all here now, and it's been so long, since the first moment. And so I know this might be difficult, but what was the moment that you were that was the spark of an idea, of a character, of a scene, of something that was this is the beginning of Flux Destiny? I mean, because then now you're this is your job, this is your main job, and this is now my job, and you've already impacted so many people, but it started from somewhere. It started from a sketch or a seed of an idea. So what was it? What was the moment that was this is Flux Destiny?
It's funny because I was talking to someone the other day about how the creations of these worlds happened, and it's kind of how stars form, form with interstellar dust kind of starts coming together, and slowly over time they come together and finally it combusts into nuclear fusion and you've got a star that's born. I feel that that's kind of the path that Flux Destiny has taken, because when I tell you, it's not an easy this moment, but I can tell you that the journey began, and I'm going to date myself by saying this, but it began with when I first saw, when I was 8 years old or whatever, Nickelodeon used to play this show called The Mysterious Cities of Gold, which was kind of pre-Avatar. It's proto-Avatar kind of material, right? It was the first um, you know, it was the first series that had an ongoing story, and it was an anime. It was an anime co-production with France, and it was just like, if you watch it now, it's very dated because it was in the 80s, but it was so exciting, and so the world was so cool, and the powers that the things that they were dealing with were so epic. For me as a little kid, it you know, blew my socks off, to see this thing.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do that someday. I want to make a story like that someday. And in fact, a little trivia. Marco, who is our main character in one of our main protagonists in the story, his last name is actually a tribute to one of the characters in the Lost Cities of Gold. And so it's kind of like a tribute for that being the spark to getting me into creating this. So over time, as I started to explore that, it's not something, I think a lot of people see the final product and they see, regardless of what it is, if you followed the development of Avatar, for example, a lot of people instantly think, oh, it must have come out like that. It didn't. If you read the books about the development of Avatar and you see the start, I remember seeing the starting sketch of Aang, and I think it was Aang and like there was a monkey or something. I forgot what the drawing was.
Yeah, it was very like cyberpunk, steampunk world, very different.
It was a very different universe, a very different thing, but over development, it became what it was. And so over my time as, growing up in the late 80s and 90s, watching these shows that were coming out and getting into anime, for example, and seeing this kind of more epic storytelling, getting into things like Avatar, The Last Airbender, shows, which inspires lots of people. Seeing lots of shows like, Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo. We can go down a list of things that have impacted me, especially like video games. Video games were a big impact on me as well, that they really helped push me, like fantasy games and things like that. They pushed me to want to create this universe. So over time, as I'm developing and kind of thinking what it is, the frustration always is, well, what's my unique thing, right? What's my, and that's not something that comes overnight. It comes with dedicating to finally getting one day that it will come, but it comes out of iteration. And that's why I used the example about Avatar, was that drawing is far from what it ended up being. And that's the same with Flux Destiny. The first drawing that I did of Marco and Hugo, I actually remember, I still have it. It's awful drawing because I was not a good artist then, but I was drawing this drawing, and the characters were completely different. If I would have taken that story that had been developed then, or that I saw then, today, it would be something completely different. Their designs were completely different. Their roles were very different. The universe they were in was very different. So it's a hard question to answer. I'm sorry I'm kind of taking you down this winding road, because it was not it started with a spark of, I saw this great piece of storytelling, which was The Mysterious Cities of Gold. And I said, I want to do that. I want to make something like that gives me the feeling that when it's done, I went through this amazing adventure, and I wanted to have the opportunity to give someone else that feeling.
Well, cool. Yeah, and so talking about the characters, right? Are Marco and Hugo the first characters that you thought of, or were there others, or did they change names? Like, who was the first, you're like, okay, so I'm making this world, right? And I've got to populate it with somebody. Who was like the first spark? Was it Marco and Hugo, or was it somebody else?
It's so funny, because now that I'm recalling the full history, now that you're making me go down this like memory lane of things and remembering like them crawling out of the protoplasm or whatever, it was I remember the first webcomic. So I used to do this webcomic called Cause Effect, and it was this cute, funny. It was completely silly. It was about this, group of squirrels in a rock band, and they were busy like fighting evil manufactured pop stars. And so I was doing lots of like cute, just webcomic stuff, and it had done really well as a webcomic. So it began with this original idea that I had, which was meant to be another webcomic, and I started working on it and iterating on the idea, and the characters that were in this webcomic turned into the characters that we know as Marco and Hugo today. And so to answer your question about the first character, it would be Hugo. Hugo was the first character. In fact, I have on a piece of paper somewhere and I still have this paper where I wrote his name down for the first time. And so his birthday in March, which is his canonical birthday, is actually when I came up with him, is based when his character was created.
Yeah, so it's so interesting how things evolve like that, out of things that you wouldn't even think about. And I'm sure that there's plenty of characters that you had in that webcomic that don't exist anymore, and that we'll just never know about. But and still though, they made the foundation for Flux Destiny. It's like they're still in sort of the fabric of that, but they're not necessarily there anymore. So it's always so interesting how, as artists, and storytellers, how our stories, even failed ones, even ones that don't ever come to light, they come forward in our work still. They're still a part of it.
Well, it's funny you talk about that common thread. The common thread still goes back to the Mysterious Cities of Gold, which was the story that even though the characters and the premise were changing, the intent didn't. The intent was to create this deep adventure that had high stakes, that had characters that you felt like you knew, that you wanted to be friends with, that you wanted to see them succeed, and that they face these just like very difficult odds and the climax, it builds up to a satisfying climax, right? That there's so much at stake and it's such a big deal that so my intent was always the same. Had I continued those other versions of the story, they would have had that spice, for lack of a better word. They all would have been the same. It just was, what the ingredients were different. And in this particular case,
and that's perfect, because that leads into my next question, which is like, what, and you've kind of already covered it, but I want more because I'm just so interested. What was like the vibe and of the plot?
Because I was so inspired by other shows and video games that were like fantasy based, I think a lot of people instantly go to kind of the high fantasy feel. And so the initial Flux Destiny was more, for lack of a better word for it, it wasn't this, but it was more medieval in the way it was, because that's kind of what people associate with fantasies, like Legend of Zelda, which is more high fantasy, kind of vibe. Even you could argue that to a lesser extent, Avatar is kind of like that too, where it's more like pre-technology, pre-industrialized civilization kind of feel. But so many had done that. Even fewer, like when you start getting into things like Full Metal Alchemist, for example, which is more, it's not really, but you could say steampunky kind of feel to it, even though it's not really steampunk, at least in my opinion. It's more, it has that vibe of it. It still takes place in, antiquity. It takes place a long time ago, right? And so the idea of taking creating a fantasy in a contemporary setting was something that I feel like I had an opportunity that could be unique to what I was doing. And to make it stand out. And it's not that I'm the first to do something like that, but I just felt like it was something that there was a hole that I could fill with this particular story.
Yeah. Well, cool, Chris. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of what this series is about? I mean, we are so fortunate to be where we are, and the journey is just so interesting, and so tell us a little bit more about what you want to do in this sort of new mini series we're doing.
So in this mini series, we're going to cover a couple things. We're going to be talking about and it's all journey, right? It's like the journey that we've taken for the themes and inspirations behind Flux Destiny, which are very important because I spent several years creating a deep, not only the deep lore for it, but I wanted the theming of it to be well thought out as well. So that's going to be an important thing that we discuss. We're going to talk about what it was like posting the first art and deciding how I was going to expand the world from there, these are kind of like leaps of faith and courage to do this, to take those.
Yeah.
And any creator will tell you that's always kind of a scary thing to do, We're going to talk about the first pilot events that, the first experiments for Flux Destiny, which include the Battlegate webcomic, which was the very first incarnation of these characters and the first attempt to try to create something. It was kind of like a live development that people were witnessing in real time. And then the pilot book, which was the Fortuna's Rings book that I wrote. And finally, rounding it all out with doing a conversation about the non-spoiler differences between the non-canon material that a lot of people know about that's now non-canon, and that upcoming canon material that will result from the next book.
Cool. All right. Well, that sounds like so much fun, and I'm honestly so excited because it's like a documentary, but we're doing it like just us, like we're just exploring with our fans, like how it started. And I'm sure a lot of people don't know like how long you've actually been doing this. This isn't like something that popped up a year ago. This is like a life development story, and that is so much more interesting than something that's just like made in a big studio for a bunch of money. This is like the thing that you want to do. So I'm sure that lots of people are going to be excited about where it came from.
I think so too, and I hope that it's inspirational to people who are I'm far from the only creator who has their own fictional universe, right? And I was inspired by other creators who created their own universes. And if there's one lesson that I hope that I can impart on people who are trying to build their own, is patience. You cannot birth something. Nothing worthwhile is easy. And something that I saw in this Hayao Miyazaki documentary, he had this, and I actually printed it. I have this thing on the wall that I printed because in the captions, when they were translating what he was saying, he said, I'm paraphrasing because it's over there. I could stand up and go read it right now and what it said. But basically the premise is, don't avoid the hassle, because the hassle is what's worth it and what makes it worth it, right? And I think that in a world today where we're now on the verge of like, not only verge, we are in a world where AI is creating art, and now people are using AI to write. They can tell when something isn't coming from your heart and soul, and people can tell that. And I think it's best summed up by a tweet that I'm also paraphrasing. I wish I saved this tweet. I cannot find it, but this person wrote, "If you didn't take the time to write it, why should I take the time to read it?" And I think that's such a powerful statement. And it has stuck with me because I feel like that really encompasses my vision and my drive for all of this, because I personally love investing in people's universes they've put so much care in. It's like, when you see like a grandfather clock or something that someone has like carved out of wood, and they put all the, like, there's something about that's like, it's so magical. And, I everything we do here, Ella can tell you, because she's behind the scenes working with me and our concept artists and other folks who work with us. Like it's a labor of love and passion to create these worlds. And I hope that a side effect of this is that we inspire people to be patient and continue to build their own characters, their own universes, and their own stories.
Yeah. Flux Destiny, no pain, no gain is what we're trying to say.
It just happens. There's a moment where it's like,
Exactly.
your narrative water breaks and you're ready to go, you know.
That's the second important thing is you have to, one, you have to be patient, but the second point that we're trying to make is that you will absolutely know when it's ready. There is going to be a moment where it will burst from you in such a way that it's not going to hold itself back anymore. You know, like, and it's something that, you know, we talk about a lot, and I think it's something that, what's so important to us is that we want you to be here for it because we know that it's here. You know, like, we want you on this journey because, you know, it's it's time for us to you know, bring forth these stories because they're ready.
They're ready. And I'll tell you, I've had opportunities in the past to bring this out when it wasn't ready. There's 2 instances, and I won't name company names, but I will say that there were two companies, very large companies, who, when I first went to go pitch Flux Destiny in its nascent form, when it was still that Battlegate form, who they loved the concept and they wanted to start talking about a television show. But the problem was that they wanted to make major changes to it that would have made it completely different than what it is today. Like a completely different, like they wanted to take Marco and Hugo and turn Hugo into a girl and then turn it into a love story. And that it's a completely different story if you do that, right? Like it has, like,
Yeah.
romance has nothing to do with like the primary story, you know? And so they wanted to make wholesale changes to the premise that would have made it a completely different story. But there was that carrot dangled out there that you can have this, you can be doing it. But I didn't want that. This was not the vision that I had for it. You know, I wanted to create this story, and I stuck with it. And then years later, I had another opportunity with another firm who was ready to take it and put it out there. But it wasn't because they liked the premise and they were ready to go on the premise, but the lore and things behind the universe weren't fully ready. They weren't cooked yet. It's like pulling a souffle out early or something, you know. I'm like a no cook, but I hear that's a bad thing, right? It's like I could have done it, but it wasn't ready, and it would have collapsed because the fundamentals weren't there. But now, from our experiences, you and I, we are very involved with the community, and the things that we discuss with them, we have intense lore discussions with our community. And I invite, you know, if you happen to be watching and you're not part of our Discord server, you should come to fluxfandom.com. And we've got such an awesome community there. You'll make friends really fast. We've got you'll be inundated really quickly with hellos the minute you come in. It's like very eager, fun community. But there's in our lore channel, we have really deep discussions that I would not have been able to have back then.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing when you said about the ready, is that I can sit here and people can ask me things about the universe, and 99% of the things I can answer with pretty solid, you know, certainty. And the other 1%, I have enough that I can make it up if I need to, and kill it. But I also want to add that the community is very important to us. Creating a universe that has a positive community and fandom around it is very important to us, because, you know, in this day and age of reboots, of endless reboots and the toxic fandoms, you're going to find the complete opposite in Flux Destiny. You know, when you go into our Discord server, for example, you're just going to see a completely different experience that you would normally get. We get so many people who comment, that's the first thing they say, wow, this is nice. You know, this is like a nice place to come hang out and talk with people and make friends and, you know, talk about the universe. But not only the universe, you can talk about other things too. You know, it's truly a place that brings people together, and a universe they can be proud of. So that was very important to me, and I'm really happy about how we've been able to create the spark for that universe. So, well, anyway, Ella, thank you so much for giving me the space to go down this memory lane. It's been kind of fun recalling all that, and I appreciate you indulging me a little bit. I also want to take the time to invite all of you to come to our Discord server. If you go to fluxfandom.com, it'll take you straight there. We've got a great community there who's really supportive. We talk about everything from Flux Destiny to Flux Fantasy to anime, video games, you know, pop culture, you name it. It's a really cool group. So I hope you go to fluxfandom.com to do that. Also want to encourage you to sign up to subscribe here to our YouTube channel so you can get all the updates. And we also do live streams on here. So when you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, you're going to get the alerts when we're live streaming. Also on Discord, we do have a event calendar on there. So that's another benefit to joining the Discord server. So thank you, Ella. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you in the fandom. We're putting lots of videos. I got to give a big shout out to Ella here, who does all our editing.
Oh, don't say that. If they don't like the editing, then that's not good.
Hey,
somebody
but you know
else
what?
does it.
You can edit that out if you're so good at it. She's the fastest editor in the West, so she puts these things together really quickly.